Wir freuen uns jetzt auf einen Beitrag von dir, Olaf. Du bist Head of Engineering bei Skillup.ai und erzählst auch was zu NLP. Du bist schon länger im Data Science-Umfeld tätig, hast Computer Science auch promoviert vor mittlerweile 12 Jahren, habe ich gesehen. 10 Jahren, sowas um den Dreh. Und seitdem auch praktisch tätig im Data Science-Umfeld. Wir freuen uns sehr auf deinen Beitrag.
Dankeschön.
Gut, viel Vergnügen.
Hi, I decided to give the talk in English, so might be easier for some of the people in the audience, maybe in the live stream. Yeah, I'm going to talk about NLP as a service, and specifically, I've been working with GPT-3, actually starting with the proof of concept and bringing us as close to production as possible. Maybe a bit about myself. Yeah, I didn't know that I did my dissertation 10, 12 years ago, but actually since then I've been working in companies and have been doing like a lot of different roles. So nowadays I would consider myself as somebody who's actually doing full stack data science, machine learning. So I've actually been doing it end to end, from product, from business requirements, over data BI stuff, the whole ML thing, engineering to UX, and bringing really things to the user. Currently, I work with Skillup.ai. This is a startup. I'm pretty new there, joined there 3 months ago. It's about education, technology in the sector. What we are doing, we are developing a personalized learning experience for big corporate companies. That means like we want to break up the traditional training-based education style in bigger companies to make it more individually tailored to everybody's needs and to have a much better impact and huge, like as learning is a huge success factor for companies, we want to actually tackle that and help the companies in that area. All right, let's start with natural language processing as a service. So you might be aware that there's a lot of things, technologies around NLP, text-to-speech, text generation, sentiment analysis, text translation, entity recognition. You can find a lot of services out there in the cloud offered by different companies. And the big ones, definitely Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and specifically today I will be touching OpenAI. They have invented, or they trained the GPT-3 model. They are supposed to work on the GPT-4 model as of now, but we'll have a closer look at this. And just to see how the audience is familiar with that, who has heard of OpenAI and things like DALL-E, image creation from text descriptions? Okay, there's a couple of people. We won't look into that, but more in the text creation area. And let's see what we can do here. First, as an example, what is powered today by text creation by these technologies? For example, typing assistants. You might have heard of Grammarly. There's a lot more startups that are creating products in this area. Here's an example from WordTune. You can write a sentence, and you can ask the tool to rewrite your sentence, like in a formal tone, in a casual tone, and it will give you suggestions how you can rewrite your sentence. So it's like a writing assistant, a typing assistant for you to make better marketing advertisements, to write better emails, and a lot more like this. This is quite interesting what's out there because it saves you time, it makes your life a lot easier. But one takeaway when you look in these things is, at least what we saw, is these kind of products should be interactive. You might have a tool like DeepL that translates you German text into English, English text into German. There's also AI in the background. But with these kind of tools, it makes a lot of sense to make them interactive, to have the user in the loop. You want to make suggestions how you can use these tools. It's hardly possible to have something like this and say, This is the input, what the user typed, and the machine will give you an output. And that's exactly the truth that you should be using in the end. That's probably not going to work because you have to go with the user, with the people, to make them suggestions and to show them what is possible. Otherwise, AI might feel a bit awkward. What's all behind this? Who has been using large language models? A couple of people. I don't want to go into detail. So they're sort of the hot topic, the hype. Every year, there's a new large language model coming out. And the most important ones are GPT-3. There has been Megatron-Turing NLG from Microsoft. There's other large language models like Gopher, Bloom. GPT-Neo-X is a large language model that has been created by a research group where a lot of people contributed. And by saying this, I want to note, training large language models is actually only affordable for bigger companies and maybe for bigger research groups. It's not something you can do at home, and it's not something that you should try to do in your medium-sized company. It's just too expensive, takes too much time, and that means there's some limitation to using these models. And nowadays, what you can typically do is have a public pre-trained model that you can download, that you can use for yourself, so you can save the time for doing the initial training of this language model, or you use an API. Some of these language models are exposed through APIs, so you can try to use them there. And that's actually what I did, what we did, and I will show you a bit more of what we did there. Actually, I want to do one step back now and think of like, what is AI? And why you should use AI in your company. And I actually did something like this. I asked some people what they think about what AI is and how we could use it in the company, what the value of AI is in the company. And you might have similar or different experiences, but when I asked like the C-level CEO, I had the impression like, hey, AI is something you have to implement nowadays in your company, in your product. It's this fancy stuff. You should have it on the slide deck. It's good for getting venture capital, and everybody else is doing this. But this stays a bit unspecific, so maybe let's ask software engineers. And there's a lot of people in software engineering who are also looking into this, and especially when we talk about NLP as a service, it gets very easy nowadays to just go somewhere, use a library, use an API to integrate AI, NLP in your products. But I noticed some shortcomings because you cannot just integrate it and then assume that it's going to work. You still have to do a lot of experimentation, a lot of testing, and making it actually work for your product. So sometimes I have the feeling that software engineers are sort of not seeing the whole kind of work that is necessary because it's not done by just implementing a library. Well, then talk to data scientists, ML people who have been working with this for a long time. They will tell you, yeah, AI is just machine learning. You train a model, you have the data, you do training, test data sets, training data set, validation data set, you do the training, you deploy it then somewhere. But actually, I had the feeling it's taking too long. That if you have a team of data scientists, it will take very long for them to actually put it into a product. So what's the product in the end that you're going to build? And then I went to the product managers and said, like, hey, what does AI mean for you? What does it mean for your product? And to my surprise, most of the product managers couldn't really tell me. And I think that's a problem. That sometimes you have the tech people, you have the software engineers, they sort of have an idea how they want to integrate it, but the product managers are falling short of really knowing what's the value of AI or of NLP in your company. And for me, based on the experience I had over the past years, there's 3 points where I see this is very important for starting an NLP or AI project. First, you need a common understanding of what the problem is you want to solve. Is there actually a problem that you can solve with AI, with NLP? If there is such a problem, then define the goal and make it measurable. What is it? Is it like, do you want to increase conversion? Do you want to increase user engagement? Do you want to reduce cost? What's actually the problem and the goal in solving that problem where you want to apply AI and NLP? And in the end, having a cross-functional team is, from my side, really important to make this project successful, because you need all the different perspectives from the different people. You see, over the years, while I have been doing a lot of stuff end-to-end, I'm heavily customer-focused nowadays. So I don't want to just implement an NLP solution, but I want to make it work for the customer, and therefore we need to have the goal in mind. Let me give you some examples. So you've seen, I've been working for Jimdo before, now I work for Skillup.ai. What are the different use cases we can find there? So Jimdo's main product is website and online shop builder. And the main audience is solopreneurs, small businesses, people who usually don't know how to build a website. So they go to Jimdo, they can create a website, it's very easy. But especially if they're creating the first website, what's their pain points? They don't know what to write on their website. They have the blank page syndrome, they have a writer's block, they don't know how to structure all that stuff. And one of the things that Jimdo tries to help them with is to figure out like how to write a paragraph about my business explaining why people should buy my product. That's just one of the examples. And what you can typically do is, you can go to a copywriter, pay them and say like, this is what my business is about, this is what should be on my website, and then they do it. But the potential here is let AI do this. Then you don't have to pay a copywriter, you don't have to go to somebody who is actually expert in that field, because you want to make this as easy as possible. Skillup.ai, as I said, it's about education technology. The product is a personalized learning coach for corporations. And the situation is that in a company, you have a project, or you have a team with a specific team goal, but you don't know which skills are most important for that project or for your personal learning goal. Again, you can go to somebody, to a senior person, or you can figure out something in a company, how you want to shape that goal, educate all the key people, upskill them. But I see there's an export error. So what you want to do, the task at hand is essentially that you want to create a list of the most important skills to have a successful project. And then you need to like upskill the people or get the right people in the team that you can actually reach your goal. And taking these 2 examples here, my claim is we can do that with AI and with NLP to create sort of a suggestion for the people that they can use to actually get these tasks done in a more efficient way than they can do today. So now we are coming to the core of this talk. It's about where to start, proof of concept, building a prototype, implementing MVP, and really putting that into production. And I've basically been gone through these steps, and I want to give you some insights of what the learning were along the way. All right, proof of concept. We are talking about GPT-3, we are talking about OpenAI. I don't know if you have seen this before. OpenAI has a lot of examples what you can do with their large language model. And they have a playground. And actually what I would say is using their playground and trying out if your specific problem works there is already your proof of concept. Go in there, use the playground. In this example, it is an instruction that says, summarize this for a 2nd grade student This is one of the examples that OpenAI already provides. You see there is 10 lines of paragraph that describes something, and I don't know if you can see it, there is something with a green background. This is what the system has as an output for you. And you can do the experimentation by putting in different instructions, putting in different texts, and ideally, you should do that with the whole team, because everybody in the team has sort of a different angle how to approach this, different things they will try out. But if you can make it work in the OpenAI playground, I'm pretty sure that you can put it into a real product. It takes a bit of time to do all this experimentation, but actually, if the output that you see in here works for you, I would say your proof of concept is already pretty much done. There's one caveat. As I said, this is experimentation. The whole thing is called prompt design. If you want to get good results, you have to test a lot. What's the ideal input into the system that you get the desired output? And there's different ways how to do that. And actually, that's called zero-shot, few-shot, and in the end, you can do fine-tuning of the model. Zero-shot means you mainly give just one instruction, and the system will give you some output. This might work well. If it doesn't work well, you can give examples. You put in an instruction, we've seen before, summarize it for a second grade student, and you give an example how the summarization could look like. You can also do some other instructions here. This will actually usually improve the quality of your output because you're giving examples. The system can see from these examples what the patterns are, and the result should usually be better. You can do another step, that's the fine-tuning. If you have a specific data set, you can take all your data, you can actually train the OpenAI model with your data to be working especially on your typical examples, and then you can further increase the quality of the output. There's one interesting paper here. It says, large language models are zero-shot reasoners. So some researchers figured out that the better you do the instruction or the better what you give to the system, the better the result will be. And actually what they did is like they gave an instruction and they added one sentence. And the one sentence was, explain this step by step. And the OpenAI model learned from this that it should probably break down the output that it generates into smaller chunks that are more useful for the user in the end. And what they basically said is like, yeah, you don't need fine-tuning all of the time, but maybe you should really think about like, how should your prompt look like? The implementation of a prototype is actually not that complicated. You need some sort of front end for your user to interact with. The recommended way is to have an API wrapper for the OpenAI API. In our case, we used Python integration with fast API and some logic around that to do all the wrapping here. But essentially, that's it. Simple wrapper, and then you serve the results to the front end, and you take the input from the user from the front end. If you want to see some code, this is the example actually from their website, because it's really just 4 lines of code. Oh, well, 5 if you consider installing the package here. But actually, you just import it, you set your API key, and all you need to do is, in this case, you say you want to have a text completion. You say what model you want to use. Prompt is the input that you give to OpenAI, to the API, and you will get a result back. For the people who have looked into this, they probably know OpenAI offers different models. And some are powerful, some are more cheaper to use. The standard models are DaVinci, Curie, Babbage, Ada. And you see the difference here, but you can also look it up on the website. And my experience was, maybe let's start with the most capable model they have, see what it can do. because it can really give you amazing results. But if you want to then put it into production, the best way is, okay, can you achieve the same results with a less capable but cheaper model? But that also needs some experimentation to work with it, to figure out, can you mimic it? Do you need to design the prompt in a different way? But actually, you can get close to that, what you have there. In the end, the consideration here is, how many users do you have? How often do you want to call the service for some interaction you're having with the user? Of course, if you have a lot of users, a lot of interactions where you want to call this API, using the most powerful model gets expensive. So you might want to cut down the cost and see, like, how do you integrate it in the product in the end. One note, OpenAI is going to drop the prices the day after tomorrow. There was an announcement. They basically cut it into less than half. So the most expensive, most powerful model so far, DaVinci, is dropping from 6 cents to 2 cents for 1,000 tokens. What does it mean? Maybe I should give you some numbers. The things we did were like, okay, proof of concept, playing around with the playground of OpenAI. That cost us less than $2 a month. That's really not much. Prototype implementation, where you would use like automatic generation of some output for the user, actually in our case was less than $20 a month. That's not much. When you want to put it into production, you should do the math. You should try to calculate. Like, you could say, you want to generate 10,000 paragraphs a day. If one paragraph, the length is about 100 tokens. You can see with the DaVinci model, it would be $20 a day. With the Curie model, the next model, it would be $2 a day. But you should do the math to figure out how many API invocations you want to have, how much would it cost for you, and then you can think about optimization. How much can you afford? How much money do you want to spend? And where do you want to end up in the end? But it's very easy to just use the API, to use the playground, and to do some initial experimentation here. The next important part that at least we learned is get user feedback. Get it as early as possible. And we did that with user interviews. So we had a very basic front-end integration. Let the user type something, run it through the OpenAI API, get the generated text back to the user, display it, and see what the feedback is. And I had some very funny user interviews, like with the Finnish actor, which was really cool. We got it through an agency to have some test users here. But this was really, really nice. And all the interviews we had were really fun and actually eye-opening. Because whenever you think, hey, this is how you're going to generate your reply, or how you want to shape the text generation and present it to the user, the point when the user sees it, how they react to it, how they perceive what's going on behind the scenes, it's so amazing to realize that they might have a totally different context that you haven't thought about. And we ended up redoing the UI 3 times. First time it was rather static, saying okay, we have to present 3 different results to the user, because that allows them to choose what's the best result for them. But they didn't really get it, what they should do. So we redesigned it with the parameters you can put in it. In the end, we had a more interactive application where they could have something like a type ahead. It looked like somebody else would be writing it for them. But that was the best user experience in the end. So before you spend time on optimizing your implementation of OpenAI or of GPT-3, actually test it and see what works best for your users. Ready for production? Almost. There's a couple of hurdles still. Be aware of social bias. So all these models may have some bias in their data, like racist comments or sort of perspectives that were crawled or that were ingested through the data. You might have also other sort of biases in there. If you don't take care of them, you might end up with a product which is not generating the output you want to present to the users. You should do some content checks. Actually, OpenAI provides all this for you. You need to get approval by OpenAI. One of the biggest things you should consider is how can you make sure that you ensure consistent results? Because you never really know what's going to be generated by the AI in the background. You can test a lot, but you might find edge cases where the user types in something where you don't get the consistent results you want to have in the end. And of course, data privacy is also an issue. Hey, but what about transfer learning? I don't know if you have been waiting for this. We are talking about machine learning. We are talking about large language models. Should we be doing transfer learning? Well, in my experience, we didn't have to use it. Because we first concentrated on the proof of concept and doing quick product iterations to make sure that what we are building is actually useful for our users. Doing fine-tuning, transfer learning, etc., is an optimization from my perspective. There might be use cases where you need it in the beginning, but in the use cases we had, we didn't need it because we want to first make sure that what we are actually building, we can get feedback fast. And with OpenAI and with this service, it was actually quite fast to go through all these steps. So I've been building machine learning models myself, and I've been doing fine-tuning, transfer learning, etc. But actually, the time taken for doing all these steps, for deploying it, for setting up everything in your infrastructure, actually takes a lot of time. And using such an API is like you just implement the API, you use it, you have it in your product, it's super fast. So my summary here was, it actually made a lot of sense for us to not just try out OpenAI, try GPT-3, but to start with the real user problem that we had identified. And to do a quick POC, as I highlighted before, I think the OpenAI playground is very useful for doing that. If you can make it work there, it should work in practice as well. And you definitely, in most cases, I think you need to have the user in the loop. That's also what OpenAI says. You need to get the feedback. You need to make different suggestions to the user in terms of what you're generating. And implementing a prototype and getting the user feedback, the earlier you can do that, the better. I thought we should have also been faster in doing that. It took a lot of time, but in the end, I think what was created was very successful, was getting very good user feedback from the people that saw it. And so building an in-house AI NLP solution in that case is an option, but I would only do this as an optimization afterwards. All right. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Olaf, for the interesting talk. We do have a question from the audience. Someone is asking whether the OpenAI respects the DSGVO. Do you know that?
I would say yes and no. They have very strict requirements for you how you integrate their service, but you have to make sure that you're not sending them any private user information. Of course, if you have something where in your application the user can put in some text, where you do text completion, translation, whatever, if the user puts in their email address, if they put their banking information, this is going to be sent to the OpenAI service. So you have to make sure that you either educate the people or that you make sure that it's not going to be sent to OpenAI. But very good question, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, we don't have another question which focuses on this speech specifically. Maybe there is another one from the audience right now. But we do have another question, which is rather general. Und ich kann das jetzt nochmal auf Deutsch machen. Die Frage war von jemandem, der wahrscheinlich remote teilnimmt, inwiefern die Beiträge jetzt gerade aufgezeichnet werden. Und das ist der Fall. Also man kann sich die Beiträge auch im Nachhinein angucken. Also, liebe Gabi, das kann man. Ja. Maybe you can repeat the question, because
of course.
Guys,
how well do the content filters work? I think they already work quite well. So it's actually a free service from OpenAI. You can make another call to the API saying this is sort of the output that was generated, and is this safe content? They have 3 levels. Safe content, maybe safe content, or maybe not safe content, and definitely not safe content. And they say you should only use the content that is absolutely safe, otherwise you should discard it. So they're offering you the service to actually check it. You don't have to do it on your own. And we tried a lot of different things like swearing, using racist connotation in the text, etc., etc. And it actually was quite well detecting this. But we didn't do like a very extensive experiment here. But it seems to be working actually quite well.
Okay, thank you, Olaf. Thanks very much for the interesting talk. Your applause.
Thank you.